In this video, we are going to continue with conditions. Now, before I do that, I want to save this. So I'll just come here, double click on it and give it the name Python Lab 1, and I'll type enter, and it's going to save it on my Google Drive. Then if you had stopped for a while, you can go to runtime and just run everything, and everything will run. Now we are going to continue here. Now I want to do some check of multiple conditions. So I do my hashtag. So I want to check multiple conditions. Now to gain time, I won't be typing everything from now. I'll just do a bit of copy and pasting. I'll just be pasting some of the things so that the videos will not be too long, and then we can gain time. So right now I've just initialized two economic variables. The unemployment rate is 7% and the labor force participation rate is 9%. So I just want to check multiple conditions, checking these two variables to see which one is larger than the other or if they are equal. So right now I check the condition if unemployment rate is equal. So one equality sign is an assignment. So you are assigning to this variable the value of 9. When you put two equality sign, it means you are checking if they are equal. So each time you want to check if two variables are equal, you use two equality sign. But when you want to assign something to a variable, you use one equality sign. So I want to check if unemployment rate, which is 7%, is equal to the labor force participation rate, which is 9%. And if they are equal, I go on with print equal. Now, given that I want to do multiple conditions, I will be using what we call else if. If I just wanted to check one condition, like in this case, I'll use else. But I want to check more than one condition, so I'll use else if here. So here I put ELIF. So it's basically else if, but it's the shortened form. In Python, we simply use ELIF. So EL if. So here we have if unemployment rate equals to this is what you print. In case this is not true, we go on with elif or elif. Unemployment rate is greater than labor force participation rate. This is what you should print. You should print that the unemployment rate is greater than the labor force participation rate. If that doesn't hold, we go on with this. Elif unemployment rate is less than labor force participation rate, we now go on with that. So that's just how you can go on and check more than one. You can even continue and even put more elifs and see what happens. So right now let's run a condition to check and see what's going to happen. We will go with shift enter, and in this case unemployment rate is smaller than labor force participation rate, and we can clearly see it over there. So right now I want to move on and check Boolean conditions. So I go with my hashtag. So here we go. I'm going to create a variable called positive. Growth, and I'll say true, and now I simply want to check, so I'll say if. I could actually say economic growth, okay, if there is economic growth, or let's just leave it like that. If positive growth, or if there is no positive growth. So if it's equal to false. In other words, if here the assignment is not true or if it's false, what should it do? Yeah, so here I'm just saying that if it checks the condition of positive, if positive growth is false, or if this false equals false, give me true. If that's not the case, so it should give me false. So let's run it, shift enter, and it's false. Because why is it false? Because this condition, it has checked this condition, it doesn't hold. So you could replace this with true. True is not equals to false. That's why this doesn't run. This is what runs. So right now we want to look at a case which is a bit more complex. We want to take a look at nested. So we'll see what a nested if condition is. So this is a very interesting one, because if you take a look, we've initialized the inflation rate to be 3.5%, interest rate is 5%, and our condition is if inflation rate is less than interest rate, what should it do? We want it to check another condition. So if this condition holds, we want it to be able to check another condition. So if this condition holds, we want it to check this condition. Now, if inflation is less than interest rate and inflation is greater than 2%, print this. On the other hand, if inflation is less than interest rate, but it is not greater than 2%, this is what it should print. Now, after checking these conditions, in other words, if inflation is not less than interest rate, we want it to come right here and give us another else. So this is a nested if, but now we can come out and close it. So this if goes with this else. However, this first condition, if it holds, we get into this nested loop. But if this other condition is not whole, if we don't even get in here, then this is what we do. Okay, let's run it, shift enter. And we can see that nested condition met moderate inflation rate. Why? Because inflation rate is less than interest rate. You can see it here. It's less than interest rate. So automatically you will get into this loop. And when you get into this loop, you can check and you will find that the inflation rate is not greater than 2%. It's actually greater than 2. You can see it. So this is what is going to be printed. So right now we want to use the while loop to play around with some iterations. So the while loop is the type of thing where you say while a certain condition holds, keep doing something. It's like saying as long as you are less than 18 years, live with your parents. So as long as that well, in economics, as long as you are less than 15 years in Canada, you have no right to work legally. So we can say while you are less than 15, you can't work. So right now we've initialized a few variables. We are looking at the number of years, 5. We are looking at the total GDP growth as 0, and year is 0. So these are initial conditions. We want to check for 5 years. We want to look. We are saying we start with total GDP growth as 0, and we start from year 0, and then we will proceed with a while loop now. So here, this is what we are trying to do. We are saying as long as the number of years is greater than 0. Why? Because in the iteration we are going to be doing, we will be updating this. We will go from 5 and we will start decreasing it until at one point the number of years will be less than 0. But we are saying as long as it's above 0, keep doing what is below. So we start by computing GDP. Here we are simply saying the annual GDP growth is the number of years multiplied by 1,000. You can put anything here. It really doesn't matter. This is arbitrary. Now we are looking at the total GDP growth. The total GDP growth is simply the annual GDP growth, which started with 0, plus the new annual GDP growth. So this is whenever you see this combination in Python, it simply means we are adding this to itself or to whatever is here. So this is, of course, you can put your comment anywhere. You can put it after your operation. So this is a comment, I could have put it in between these two lines, but I choose to put it here because it's more practical. So this same line, you could have written it like this: total GDP growth equals total GDP growth plus annual GDP growth. However, instead of repeating this, you just take the plus sign. Given that this is already here, you just take this plus sign and you put it plus equal, and it does that. So it's going to do that operation and will continue. And right now we want to mess around with the number of years, because it's going to do this for the first iteration. It's going to do it for the second iteration. We want it by the time it reaches the fifth iteration, let it stop. Now let's play with the number of years. Number of years, it starts at 5, but we want to start decreasing it. So here we have number of years negative equal 1. This simply means, take a look at this comment. You could have written number of years equals num years minus 1. So every time you run this, you decrease the number of years by 1. So it starts at 5, it will go to 4. Now, rather than repeating this, you just put negative here and you use this shortened form. Okay, play around with it, you'll see that it works great. So when it does that, now you can come here and you also go to year. You do year plus 1, which is just what we are doing here. And once you do that, we want to do some printing. Now, why do we use year? We are initializing a variable here. It simply serves us. Let me adjust these things. We want it to be there, else we'll have an error. So we are saying year plus 1 because we want to print the iteration. We could have used anything. You can say index or whatever equals plus 1, so that the first time this runs, year will be 1, because here we initialize year to be 0, so it's going to be 1, and it's going to print iteration 1, and this will go to 4. When it runs the second time, you'll have iteration 2. This would have been 5 minus 2. Then you'll have the third iteration, fourth and fifth iteration, and by that time, this will no more be greater than 0, and it's going to come out of the loop and print that. Okay, I hope this is helpful. Try and understand it. It's fun. And here we go. You have the different iterations, and that's how it happens. Awesome. Okay, right now we are going to use for loops. That's the most important loop in Python. It's important for you to master it. So let's say using for loops. So right now I've initialized a variable, and in this variable we have GDP, inflation, and unemployment. Now I want to come and read what is found inside of this. So I simply use my for loop. Now, how does it work? You generally say for, and you give any name in terms of you want the for loop to get into this variable and extract whatever is there one by one. Okay, because it's called economic indicator list, you say for indicator in economic indicator list. This name doesn't matter. If you like, you can use I here. If you, whatever you want, you can use it. It's just that I like us to use names that make sense, but you can change this for anything. It doesn't matter. What you must use is the name you've given to your variable. This is the name we've given, so you must use it here. If let's say the name of this had been Econ Masters, you must use Econ Masters here. But this, it doesn't matter the name you use. So now we are saying that for all the elements which are found here, we want it to be printed. Okay, we want it to print. So the print has to be identical to whatever you use here as the name. Let's go Shift, Enter, and there we go. Now let's just say we call it indic. Okay, let's just say indic for you to see what I'm talking about. And here I also call it indic. So whatever you have here has to be identical here, because you are extracting this and attributing it to this particular variable here. So let's run it. Shift enter, and you'll find it's going to basically give you the same results. This, you have to always use the same name, but this, it's up to you to use any name that makes sense to you. Remember, proper labeling is very helpful, because when you come back some years later, you should know what you meant by indicator. So just to make things clear, this in Python, we call this a list. So when you use the square brackets, you call it a list. So I'll say, using for loops, for list. Okay, it's the data type, you call it list, and we are going to do for list. This time it's not going to be of data type list, it's going to be of data type tuple. So in this case, in a tuple, we don't have the square bracket, but we have the normal brackets you have. And it's exactly the same thing you are doing. Whatever you did here, you do exactly the same thing. In a few minutes, we will be revisiting the different data types, and you will learn the main characteristics of lists, of tuples, of sets in Python. We will visit them for you to be comfortable with each of them. But right now, just know that the for loop is just amazing. It can come and read whatever is in here, and you do just like you did here. For, you make sure the name of your list is what you have here. In this case, you make sure the name of your tuple is exactly what you have here. And you simply say for, use whatever you want here in blah, blah, blah. So that's just what we are basically doing. And right now I'm going to run it, shift enter, and there we go. Now we are going to move on and use it for a set. As I said, the data type, we are going to revisit it. So when you are dealing with a list, in this case, you use parentheses. You can see we have a set of economists. These are just great economists. Adam Smith, the father of economics. John Keynes, it's the father of macroeconomics. Milton Friedman, the father of monetary policy. And here we want to come and read whatever is here. Just use a for loop. You make sure whatever you use as the name of the set is what is here. And here you can use whatever you want. You can use X, Y, Z. I chose to use economist. That's why I am printing economics. Shift enter, and there we go. Now we are going to basically look at the last one we will play with. We are going to use what we call a dictionary. Now, what is a dictionary in Python? Is basically what we call a key value pair. So let's take a look at it. Now this is a piece of beauty. As we said, it's key value. So you can see for the key name, this is the value. What is the name? John Maynard Keynes. What is his nationality? British. What is his field? Macroeconomics. So for this key, you have the value. And for key value pair, you separate it with this. You can see when you move to the next key value, you separate the key and the value with that. You have a comma, the key, and the value. So the field is macroeconomics. And of course, you use your parentheses. Now, when we want to read it, this is different from the other ones. The other ones, you just print it. But here, if you just print, you will only have the key. But we want the key and the value. In order for you to have the key and the value, you present the key for print. And for the value, you have to use the name of the dictionary, you use the square brackets, and you put key. So if here you use X, you will put X here, and here you will put X. If here you use home economics, here you will also use home economics. Whatever name you use, that's what you are using. So if it takes, so for this particular key, it's going to look for the value. That's what it's going to get there. And it's going to read the key value pairs. So that's just what it does, and it's a piece of beauty. Shift enter, and there we go. Now you could try and say, what if you get rid of that and you simply do shift enter? If you simply, you see, you only have the keys, you don't have the key value. But this is actually what you want. Okay, awesome.